When we're talking about executable specifications, what we're trying to do is solve one of the biggest problems in software development, and that is the done problem. How is it that we know that we're done? What is it that we do when we're developing a web application? Usually we're taking little stories written down on index cards and we're trying to translate them into running software. Well, that process that we're trying to go through, we often have very different definitions of done. So we need to think about it really in terms of what do our users consider that as being done. When they consider a user story done, that means I can go in and take that feature and go through what I thought it should do to deliver me value. Usually that process takes the form of what we call acceptance tests. And these acceptance tests are most often defined in terms of the user interface of the application. Now, many experts, so-called experts at least, out there will tell us that, well, you should never define your test in terms of the UI because those tests are quite brittle. And that's actually true. If you look at what we're able to do with our automated testing today, most of these tests are very much bound to the DOM structure of our web applications. And so if we change that structure in any way, we end up breaking a whole lot of those tests. Because they're so brittle, they're hard to maintain, and so we eventually give up and resort to manual testing. Well, as it turns out, we humans are not very good at testing applications. We want our tests to be repeatable. We want them to be consistent. And humans are anything but. We're not good at repeatable processes. That's why we have computers. And so we get this catch-22 situation. We know that we need to test, and we know we need those tests to be defined in terms of the UI, but they're hard to maintain. They're very brittle. And so what we want to do is find a solution to this problem. What if we could come up with a solution that will allow us to have executable UI-focused specifications for our tests that would also not be brittle? And that's what I want to talk about in this talk is an open source solution, a couple of products that we'll glue together along with a design pattern that will help us to get that done. We'll use a behavior-driven development framework known as SPOC that helps us to structure our tests in this given, when, then syntax that we're used to. We'll then apply what's called the page object pattern. The page object pattern is the central focus of this, and what it allows us to do is to create a facade, if you will, over the UI of our application that separates the two orthogonal concerns of what is it that the application can do and then how is that structured in the DOM. And so our testers are concerned with the logical functions that we can do, whereas we as developers are concerned with that structure underneath. And the page object pattern allows us to create a facade between those that allows the different groups to focus on the concerns in which they're interested and kind of breaks down that brittle nature. I like to call it our peanut brittle insurance. And then finally we have something that will automatically drive our browser. Recently emerging project called Jeb, which is a groovy wrapper around the WebDriver project, allows us to write very, very succinct and clean tests that will drive the browser and play very nicely with Spock as in that behavior-driven development style, to where we end up with artifacts that we can print out and take to a business user and say, is this what you want the application to do, but that we can also execute as part of our build process and know absolutely when it is that we're done with something as well as when we've broken something. And so by the end of this talk, I hope you'll see that this is something that you could apply very much tomorrow on your projects and take your testing to a different level.